Welcome back to Armchair Sports Talk. This is Brandon Harris. Today we're going to take a look back at the Week 0 matchup between Florida and Miami. Also, we're going to look forward to the Week 1 game of the week and also the other key matchups for Week 1 in college football. Welcome back to Armchair Sports Talk. This is Brandon Harris, and joining us now is our co-host for the evening, Mr. Sean Hicks from Dallas, Texas. Sean, how you doing, bud?
Doing good, Brandon. Christmas is almost here, man. Almost here.
Almost here. We had a really interesting Week 0 matchup, and I think in total this whole concept of playing a Week 0 game really went well for college football in general. Ratings were through the roof, albeit the football was a little bit rough. But you get to see two high-profile programs out there on the gridiron. I mean, nothing better than that, where everybody just itching to get their football back in.
Yeah, I like they only had a couple games. It was nice having like a game that felt like it mattered. I don't know if it actually did in the scheme of things, but when you have two large name teams, at least it feels like it's real football and not, Montana State, North Dakota State. No offense, North Dakota State.
But also that too, but you see the legends out there on the sidelines, the Michael Irvin, all the stars, and almost had like kind of a feel to like a Hall of Fame game like the NFL does, seeing those superstars back out there. And then the storylines too. I mean, again, the two, prestigious programs, and then you see, new head coach coming in, kind of the positive momentum that they have going on there, and then the second year of Mullen and the progress that they've made. So I think it had a lot of cool storylines going on, and then we came to the game. So X's and O's were not pretty, as we kind of pointed out in our preview last week. So Sean, kind of run us through what we saw on the field on Saturday.
Well, boy, did that go to script, like almost exactly of how we thought it might go, especially from the how Miami wins the game section of it. I mean, it wasn't a pretty game, incredibly entertaining. I mean, like the comedy factor real high in the game, especially the end with all the pass interferences and fumbles, and Frank's throwing like the worst interception I've seen thrown in a really long time. But I think once you remove that component of it, it really went to script. Both defenses were as advertised. Miami's defense was great last year. They really dominated the line of scrimmage. And we knew Florida had some questions going into the game on their offensive line. But for them to completely dominate the way they did, I do think definitely means something in a lot of ways from them to move forward, right? And then Florida, they just overwhelmed, I think, Miami at the end. My big takeaway from that though is more on the Miami side than the Florida side. I think like it was a sloppy game, but man, the offense they try to run with Miami, it was abject. And I think it was criminal what they put Williams in. What do you think?
I think starting out, Dan Enos had a really good plan. A lot of quick, short passes. He kind of put Florida back on their heels a little bit, which is what we said. That's exactly what they needed to do to kind of keep Florida's defense at bay a little bit. But then as soon as you started to see Jaron Williams have to go to that second read, you were like, okay, this guy's an inexperienced quarterback. They're very, very weak on the offensive line. I mean, as soon as he looked to that second read, there was a guy in his face. I mean, that left tackle, I think based on what they were saying about him and then the little bit of research we've done, he looks like he's going to be a good player. He's kind of built up some muscle to kind of build into that frame a little bit, but he just was getting burned off the edge. I mean, he just could not handle that Miami pass rush. And then that caused Williams to, get thrown off a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I think the first couple drives were impressive. I think they did a good job of coming out of the gates and saying, hey, we're in this game. And then to your point, they really, not looking at the scoreboard, you would have thought just based on how the game was played, like they physically were winning that game for most of it, which I was really impressed with from a Miami standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, they were on defense, but I think we were texting during the game throughout it, and I think the first drive, what I said is, wow, this is a drive entirely of constraints. Like it was definitely an April drive, right? Like something they put together months ago.
Yep, scripted, yeah.
It worked really, really well. But the way everything was done, it was a fly sweep. It was a really cool pass behind the line of scrimmage. Everyone could get him block.
The tight end screen 2 or 3 times. That tight end is going to be a very good NFL player.
I will say that. He was really impressive. When I was doing my preview, he's not someone that jumped off a page. I do think I agree with you there. I think they got something.
Yeah.
But there was no like, this is what Miami wants to do as a football team, right? Like there was no base play that they can hang their hat on. And I think, well, Florida, I think it was pretty disappointing for them on offense, especially all the turnovers. You were really hoping Felipe Franks could, really right that ship a little bit and cut down the turnovers. I mean, he looked great in some throws, no doubt, but hit some of the, I mean, that interception at the end was abject and horrible. And I think it was real disappointing to see he doesn't have that, Brett Favre gunslinger is still there. A little bit, right?
Well, then the first half it paid off with that dime he threw down the seam, just man, that was an NFL throw. In general, though, I like Pirine, the running back. I think their line still has a long way to go. I was impressed though with, again, Miami was able to penetrate those gaps and be really disruptive to kind of prevent that line, from that ground game from getting going and then going off the play action from that. But in the second half, they started to try to, to loosen those things up, and then eventually led to the lead. So, flashes on both sides, but a lot of procedural issues, a lot of ugly penalties like we thought might happen. I think from where we stand now, though, you see a lot of talent on both sides and two programs that are headed in the right direction. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know about Miami. Like, I just look at them and go, I don't know what you're trying to do, right? So you made a good point, I think, when we were texting on Saturday, when you talked about, is there another group as much as Miami's defense outside Clemson that someone can hang their hat on their ACC? And I think you're right. I don't think there is, but I think that offense is going to be just so bad because they don't have a base play. So I think it's going to look a lot like Florida State's last year, which I don't think you want to be, week one going, oh man, shooting for Florida State 2018, because that's really what it looks like to me. Yeah. I think Florida, on the other hand, will be fine. I think they built into a really good defensive line, but they had a plan. You knew what they wanted to do. A lot of it was execution issues, not scheme-based, I don't know what we want to do. I think the Florida team you saw that day is not going to be who you see 5 weeks from now. I think the Miami offensive issues you saw in week 0 is going to carry over through the rest of the season. And I think, like I said, to me, it's kind of screams Florida State 2018 a little bit.
I think, though, too, if that's a great point you bring up about Florida being just pretty darn good on defense. Those two corners, they can get after the passer, their line. I mean, that's an NFL defense. So Miami, though, coming in, this is an inexperienced offense. Against the rest of that ACC, they could probably stand to be, perform a little bit better. Maybe by the end of the year, get a little bit more momentum going their way. And I don't see any other team coming out of that side of the division just based on their strength. And I think I saw enough from Jaron Williams in that tight end. I think Tate Martell, they could probably use him a little bit. I really like going back to their identity. And I said this last week. I think they should go to some kind of RPO-focused offense that keep the defense off balance, which I felt like they did. They were very creative in those first couple of drives.
They were creative.
But going off of the spread attack, RPOs, using the quarterback to kind of be more of a playmaker, I think Williams and Martell have that ability. So maybe they could do a little two-headed attack, and that's probably their best shot.
I don't think Williams survives the season. I mean, that's what I think.
I think he's going to get hurt? Or do you think he's going to get benched?
I think that offensive line is going to kill him.
Yeah. And again, that's why they should switch it up.
I agree. I'm worried. That's my concern, right? You look at Enos's offense, and he just none of that was run in week 0, right? And my concern is he wants to install the offense he wants 3 years from now, and they just do not have the personnel to do it. And I think they're gonna get Williams killed. A lot like DeAndre Francois was a shell of a human being at the end of last year. My concern is Williams, because I did like Williams. I agree with you there. I thought he had a lot of potential. But when you're just getting unblocked guys constantly,
it's scary.
It doesn't matter how much potential you're gonna die. But I will say this: Deejay Dallas is legit as hell. I told you that in the preview, man. That
He's
dude
a beast. Yeah, he definitely. It was a little bit frustrating to watch for him because he really wasn't getting much help. He kept running into the back of offensive linemen and just no room to work at all. But the guy was still finishing runs. I mean, he was very, very impressive.
His one opportunity, he hit 50 yards, right?
Yeah.
That was the one time he saw any daylight, and they made the most of it.
So you think they have a better chance going to, obviously a run focus, but I think they have to simplify the scheme for the linemen a little bit too. So But going to a run focus, I think spreading it out a little bit, going to the strengths of their players, quarterback-wise, being that they can run and pass, just makes a little bit more sense to me than what they look like they were trying to do, which is run more of a pro-style pass, play-action pass game.
I fear it's too late for them. I think they've spent too much time. You can't just scrap an offense after week one. It doesn't tend to work like that. And that's my fear. It's too late. I mean, I'm with you 100%. That's the offense they should have gone with because they've got playmakers on the outside. Their entire scheme should be limit the offensive line. But
yeah, well, that's too bad for a guy like Deejay Dallas because he's looks like a really good player, and it'd be nice if they had that maybe a different mindset going in. But hey, we'll see. Like we said, they got a much weaker side that division in the ACC conference in general. They're not going to see a Florida type defense every week, so they could still finish up and have a great year. And we'll just have to see what happens. So that was week 0. That's a new thing. College football is trying out, and I think it was a huge success. The ratings were through the roof. People were just itching to get their college football in. So it was a good look at it. And in general, though, we're moving into week 1.
Yep.
So give us an overview of what should you look for in week 1?
So I think the most important thing to remember in week 1 is the sloppiest week of the year. And it's important to react to what you see on the football field and on your teams, but not overreact for what you see on teams, right? Let's not forget Florida State Ole Miss a few years ago when Ole Miss is lighting them up and looks like the team of the world in the first half of that game. And Florida State comes back and you're like, man, these are 2 top 5 teams. When both of them, Ole Miss was 5-7 that year. Florida State was like 8-4. They ended up being very weak. I mean, the obvious one is Texas Notre Dame from a few years back, if you remember.
Yeah.
When it was a great game, went to overtime, 2-point conversion, and both teams were not very good. Don't overreact to what you see. Mental flags are going to happen if you see your team having a lot of flags, procedural penalties and things, especially if you've got a new O-lineman. Don't overreact to that. That doesn't mean your coaching is bad, your scheme's bad, the team's going to be bad. It means it's week 1, and this is what happens. If there's a few more turnovers, games are a little bit closer. Don't freak out. In the same aspect, though, if they're just blowing out a team that you're expecting to be decent that year, don't think, oh man, we've got the team that's just going to run the table. There's a few things you need to look at. The thing that I pay attention to, what type of errors are being made? And does the overall scheme of your team make sense, right? A lot of times in week 1, you get the base offense and the base defense, unless you're facing, a really high-ranked team. What are they trying to do, and does play action make sense based off that, right? What type of zone, what type of running are they going to do? I look for that type of stuff because that's going to mean more in the long run. And then the last thing I look for is there a player that breaks out? Think of Rondell Moore last year against Northwestern on one of the first games on Thursday. He had like 3 touchdowns, 150 yards receiving, and like 50 yards rushing. Like, he was a dude, and you knew it right away. Ed Oliver, his first game as a freshman, when he just came in and destroyed everybody. Be on the lookout for that type of player that just looks like he is going to be truly transcendent. You can normally find it in like week 1. That's the things I tend to look for. What about you, Brennan?
I have to agree with everything. I think that coming off that long off season, you're going to see some of those players make those, mental errors early in the season. And then there's a big difference from that to being a physical error and how they're going to kind of adjust to that as the season goes on. Are they physically capable of, blocking this person or making that catch? Or is it just the fact that they just made a mistake up top, above the shoulders, and they can correct that next week? A lot of that has to do with just the lights being a little bit brighter, everything being a little bit louder, and they'll get used to that, especially the younger players. I think you bring up a good point about, the Ed Olivers, Rondell Moores, those guys that, they're just kind of like all that hype, and then they go the other direction, right, than what we just talked about. Like, this is my chance, and they just kind of break through, and then they're off and running for a huge season. So a lot of interesting storylines that always come out of week 1. We have a big game starting out, a Pac-12 Pac-12 and SEC matchup. Auburn plays another Pac-12 team to start off this season. We've got Oregon coming off a 9-4 year. Their S&P Plus ranking was 41st in the country. against an Auburn team that was 8-5 with a very stellar S&P plus at number 7 overall in the country. Interesting stat that you brought out though, just before the show. Oregon's secondary win differential was negative 1.4. That's a stat that I wasn't too familiar with. Sean, can you fill us in on that?
Yeah, it's a pretty simple stat when you think about it. It's basically saying the team you beat, right, how did they do compared to the average team that they played from it? So essentially, the higher it is, the better teams that you ended up beating and who they ended up beating on the schedule, the lower the rank is, the worse they ended up doing. It's a good way to look at it from a statistical variation. So anything about 0 means they did about average, right? Anything 1, -1 means they did about a 1 standard deviation or 67% above. Once you start getting to about the 1.5 range, it'll start telling you a lot about how the season ended up doing, right? So if you're in the -1.5, -2 range, that means the teams you were beating up on tended to be a lot weaker. Then you didn't have a whole lot of real quality wins on your calendar schedule. And same with UC1. So especially in a Pac-12 when everyone was pretty even, so it's hard to get a very high standard deviation in the Pac-12. To have a -1.4 is statistically matters quite a bit. And when you compare that with a S&P ranking of 41, which is very, very mediocre along the stellar teams the like of Purdue, Minnesota, Virginia, Syracuse, who also is massively overrated. It tends to tell you a lot about what the statistics said about Oregon's team. And I think they're probably coming in this season overrated based not solely, but a lot of it off the back of Justin Herbert. And the fact that he likes him so much.
Yep. Senior quarterback coming back was projected to go for a lot of folks even as high as number 1, maybe over Kyler Murray at some point until his stock kind of blew through the roof there after Cliff Kingsbury got hired after being fired from Texas Tech, which we could probably spend a whole episode on.
We could spend days. That's the most fascinating hire in a really long time.
Absolutely on that. But Auburn, though, going to the other end of the spectrum, I mean, it's just a tough SEC West. We've touched on them a bit before. You've done an in-depth preview on them. S&P number 7. So every win they got, they had to scratch and claw for. This is a tough, experienced defense coming back, albeit with a very young quarterback, a true freshman actually in Bo Nix. So going into this game, though, against an experienced, talented Oregon team, how does Auburn win?
Yeah, I think Auburn wins. It's pretty simply is their defense just suffocates them. And I think I said this in my Auburn preview, but in my opinion, this is the best defense in the country. They return so much good talent. They have absolute stars all over the place. They were top 5 last year. They have like 7, 8 returning starters plus all this depth. They've got a true freshman that's supposed to replace a returning starter on their outside linebackers, kind of their star backer, their athletic guy. They're going to just dominate the line of scrimmage is the way they win this game, right? Don't give Justin Herbert any breath to be able to move, be able to win even if you have a numerical disadvantage based off what Oregon wants to be able to do. By just dominating your gaps and not letting anything do it, and then tackling in space consistently. If you can do that, Oregon cannot go down the field consistently. They will have to go in chunks, and if you keep that chunk to 20 yards, that's fine because your next 3 plays are going to be -4 yards, right? And then it's a punting football. And that's the number one way on defense. From an offensive standpoint, Auburn's got a very good offensive line. Oregon has some serious talent on their defensive line. Some of it's still very young. They weren't great at stopping the run last year. Oregon's probably going to have to load up the box and just try to make Bo Nix do something. What they need to be able to do is get enough big plays on the outside, break tendency enough so that their inside zone play consistently get them 4 or 5 yards. Right? If they can consistently get 4 or 5 yards on the ground and break a couple big ones where Oregon just can't 100% sell out, I think they'll have a real good chance of just constantly moving down the field and putting up points.
I think all great points there. And I think Auburn's going to have a stable of backs, but if you look at their offensive line, they're bringing back 4 seniors, I believe. So they're very experienced up front. I think, like you said, Oregon does have some studs, some really highly recruited players, But as a whole, I think if Auburn starts to get some momentum, they're going to keep guys fresh coming in there. Nix makes some plays here or there. I think it's just going to kind of snowball a little bit on that Oregon defense, and they're going to win the time of possession. I think too, though, going back to Justin Herbert, that's going to be probably what's most interesting for me is going off all that hype, and going into that draft. Now he comes out week 1. He's going to really see a lot of players up front. I mean, Big Cat Bryant, you're going to see what's his last name, and Derek Brown. Those 3 on Auburn's defensive line are most likely going to be NFL starters here, shortly.
They're certainly draft picks, no matter what.
Right. So he's going to see week 1. Man, it's going to be a good barometer of, hey, was I ready to go pro or not? And there's a lot of, other things that factor in there is how well Herbert will play, much like his supporting cast, which we'll get into here in a second. But I just think it's another interesting storyline to go off of. Like, Justin Herbert says, no, I need a little bit more seasoning, comes out and he has a chance week 1 to show folks like, hey, here's an NFL type talent, talented team in Auburn, SEC team, and I'm going to come out and show out. So going to that side, Oregon, tell us how they hang into this game and ultimately win.
Yeah, I mean, just to start with, I would say I don't like Justin Herbert the way most people do. I think this is very much the NFL has a theory of what a quarterback looks like, and because he looks like that quarterback, he's very highly rated, right? He's big, he's tall, he's athletic, he's 6'6", he's got a rocket arm. He doesn't have very good completion percentage. It's very mediocre, especially in the type of offense he's in. That said, if Oregon wins the game, it's going to be up to him. And I think it's specifically going to be a few things. It's going to be 1, 1st and 10 passing. 2, using his legs consistently because they have to play 11 on 11. They have to be willing to just roll the dice and say, hey, we got to run Justin Herbert, and his legs have to be a serious threat constantly. And then I think it's his ability to scramble when the pocket breaks down. I don't think there's anybody in there thinks that Oregon's offensive line is going to win the battle against Auburn, right? I think they're hoping that they can survive, but there's going to be times where Herbert has to make a play on the run, and he's got to make a guy miss in the backfield and make something happen to be able to do that. I think Oregon does have the offensive talent to go up with Auburn's back end and to get open with, I don't want to say relative consistency, but enough time to make plays, right? To me, it's can Herbert make a play that is broken down, turn into a big play for Oregon with a level of consistency to be able to move the ball downfield, because I don't think they're going to be able to, 5 yards, 10, 6 yards, 7 yards. It's got to be big plays. It's got to be big chunks. It's got to be turning what Auburn does very well against themselves pretty consistently. And then on defense, I think it's you do have to do what I said, which I think they will do, is load up the box, make Bo Nix beat you, and tackle in space, right? You're going to have times where they beat you from an RPS standpoint, where they get a good play onto your defensive play. Can you hold that down to where you are able to just put enough bodies in so they can't move down efficiently? This is Bo Nix's first game, right? So if you're able to put enough bodies up front and you're able to make it where he's going to have to throw the football, and you can get enough pressure on him where he can turn the ball over or feels a little uncomfortable back there, and they do have some good pass rushers, I think you can get some interceptions, some turnovers, and that's how you win the game. Big plays, turnovers, and just loading up the box and shooting every gap you can.
Absolutely. There was an interesting stat that I heard late last week, and the comparison that you've made just earlier today, we talked earlier, was about Justin Herbert comparison to Josh Allen and just their completion percentage, also just physically, and then also how their play on the field translates. And I believe the stat was basically going back and looking at current NFL players in college that had a below 60% completion percentage and kind of how they turned out in the NFL. And that's going to be interesting to look at, because right now Allen is sitting below that 60% mark. I believe Lamar Jackson was below that mark. Matthew Stafford was the only one that I think substantially jumped up after being under 60% in college. He's been the only one that kind of bucks that trend. So it looks like a guy like Josh Allen, has all the intangibles, gets to the NFL, and then can they all of a sudden become a more accurate passer? So that's going to be the big thing for Herbert, is can he figure out a way to be a little bit more consistent? And Oregon's offense doesn't always line up with really the NFL type game where you're making those, you have to make all the throws. So should be very interesting. I think it was a wise move for him to come back. I think it's going to be a great test week 1, and it'll be really interesting to see how that all plays out. So what's your prediction for this game, Sean?
31-13 Auburn. I think they're going to get up early. They're going to kind of sit on Oregon, and they're going to keep the game plan very simple. Then once they get up, they're going to be willing to run some stacked boxes, and Oregon wears down at the end. And what is a comfortable lead turns into kind of a blowout by the very end. I just can't see Oregon moving the ball with any consistency against how good this defense is, right? If I thought a little bit more of Herbert, maybe I could see them making some plays here. If he was like a Baker Mayfield, and I could see it, but I think this is just a bad fit for them and what they want to do, especially on the road. I just can't see it happening.
Yeah, I'm with you there, and I think Auburn is going to play very conservatively with Nix. I don't think they should. I think they should come out and try to kind of jumpstart the thing and see what the kid can do at home. Like you said, I think the environment is going to be a huge advantage for them. But at the same time, it probably would be most wise for them with a guy like Herbert coming in week 1 game to play a conservative, play to their strengths, which I think they'll do. So ultimately, I think you're going to see a lot of field goal attempts. I think you're going to see a few big plays here or there to keep the game exciting from a fan's perspective. But in the end, I just don't see Oregon be able to handle Auburn physically. I think they wear him down and they keep Herbert in check enough. Herbert's going to show some, make some plays, NFL talent, but I don't think his supporting cast is enough to beat Auburn. So I'm thinking like a 23-16 type game, a lot of field goals, just ugly game again.
A little closer than I'm thinking. That's interesting.
Yeah, and I don't think the score really is a good representation. Yeah, I think the game's going to be much more out of hand than that. But like I said, it's going to be a special teams type game, bunch of turnovers, not really the most pretty game to watch, but a couple interesting teams. So going off of the rest of the week 1 schedule, we highlighted a few different games to cover. So I'm just going to kind of bullet point and run through these really quick for our viewers. Sean's going to give a few thoughts, and then we are going to check out and get out of here for the night. So games of interest, Chip Kelly, year 2, UCLA traveling to Cincinnati. Sean, what do you think?
First of all, if you're UCLA, how are you traveling to Cincinnati? How does that happen? Just from a scheduling standpoint, but that's probably
Cincy AD definitely earned his paycheck on that one, right?
Yeah, what's going on, UCLA? You should, in theory, be better than that. So Cincy's actually favored in this game. I believe it's about a 3-point spread, which is basically a pick 'em, since you usually have 3 points to the home team. I thought Cincy was a very good team last year from a record standpoint. I think they kind of overachieved massively. I'm not sure I think all that much necessarily of Luke Fickell. This is going to be interesting from what is Chip Kelly. Is this still Chip Kelly, right? So let's year 1, let's give him year 0, right? Like it was bad, but he had to switch the offense. He was in a bad situation. So okay, let's throw that out the windows. Let's give it year 0. If Chip Kelly is still Chip Kelly, they should come out and win this game. And you should be able to see an offense that has some life to it, that wasn't as terrible as it was last year. There is some concerns because their recruiting was so bad. But give me UCLA. I'm gonna believe Chip. But if this goes sour, I'm gonna have some serious questions to get into.
Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised to see that Cincy's favored, to be honest. But I watched that game last year. Cincinnati under Fickell, very disciplined on defense, and then later on in the season, their quarterback, his name escapes me at the moment, but very versatile. He's a running quarterback, kind of tough to stop. So I think this game might be a high-scoring ball game. Just based on Chip Kelly's track record, and then, what kind of firepower Cincinnati brings back offensively and defensively. But I'm with you. I think UCLA, at least for Chip Kelly's sake, should win this ball game, especially since they lost to Cincinnati last year at home. Yeah, that's going to be tough if you get swept in a home with Cincinnati.
I'll say this: UCLA did get better at the end of last season. I mean, the first half of that season was beyond terrible. But I think we'll find out a lot about UCLA given this game. I think it'll tell us more than most Week 1 games do.
Agreed. Another kind of underrated game we're looking at, Utah Utes and BYU. What do you think?
In some ways, I think this could be one of the most important games of Week 1 because I think Utah, they're kind of a dark horse chance to do something to make a run because they could run the table, man. They really could because their defensive line is so damn good, and they're playing in not a great conference. I feel like they could kind of just overwhelm people from a defensive talent. And on offense, they kind of finally have put together what they want to do on offense. They have a running quarterback. They've got a pretty good running back. They've got a lot of Samoans on the offensive line.
That always helps.
Yeah, always helps. It's not going to be an exciting offense, but I think they can be efficient. And it's the type of efficiency you seem to get under Utah where you're like, how this team's 10-2, but all of a sudden they are. There's going to be a fight in this game. Like BYU and Utah do not like each other at all.
It's a great matchup. I mean, I wish this was going to be one of the it might be a primetime game, but I wish it was. I think it's going to be a game that it's going to draw a lot of interest. People would enjoy watching just because, like you said, the passion in that rivalry. You're not seeing in a lot of these week 1 games, as we're going to touch on here in a minute.
And I'll say to anyone watching, if you've not seen a Utah BYU game before, highly, highly recommend it, because it's kind of right up there with Ole Miss and Memphis of the schools. You don't think about it, but they hate each other. There's going to be multiple personal fouls in this call. Granted, it's a 10:40 Eastern start time, so on a Thursday, so it's going to be tough. But
yeah,
if you're a night owl or can suck it up, watch it, because it's going to be entertaining as hell.
Absolutely. And we got Wisconsin, USF. This one is at South Florida. What do you think?
And I should say I expect Utah to win the game. I don't think much of BYU's coach.
Yeah, I agree.
Pretty good. So I think it's going to be a high-scoring affair, because I still think UCF under Charlie Strong will put up points. They put up a lot of points last year, even with Flowers leaving. I still love their offense. I still think it's fun. It's all over the place. Wisconsin, while they do get a lot back from injury, I still think is very susceptible to this type of team that can really spread things out and throw quickly. The thing here is USF just could not play defense, and they could not stop the run, which is a real bad thing when you have Jonathan Taylor coming up.
Oh, yeah.
Like if he does not get 200 yards rushing, I will be surprised, which I know that sounds insane, but also
no, I don't think so.
But also, I've watched him play, and I've watched USF play last year. I expect this to be a lot of runs. One thing I will note: see if Wisconsin gets down early, I think you could see something interesting happen here, because the Jack Cohn experience is not a good one for Wisconsin. They're on the road. This is something where if you're on a Friday and maybe this isn't your focus, but keep an eye on the score, because USF, if they're up, this could turn to real interesting real fast.
Yeah, Taylor's the real deal for sure. So USF, they get ahead. Yeah, maybe it might make things a little more difficult for them playing from behind on the road. Northwestern and Stanford, you're the Big Ten expert. What do you got there?
So Stanford absolutely should win this game, right? You take a look at the teams, the statistic profiles, who they have coming back. There's zero reason Stanford should not win this game. Somehow Stanford is going to lose this game. I don't know how, and it's going to be the type of thing you look at the box score and you go, this makes no damn sense. How does Stanford have 450 yards of offense and Northwestern has 200 and they've lost with one turnover? I don't get it. But that's what this game feels like to me. Stanford honestly should be a pass-first team. We know that's not going to happen, but they should be, because they have an excellent quarterback, even if they've lost a couple receivers on the outside. They could not run the ball last year. Northwestern is designed against teams that like to sit up and run and hit you in the mouth. They have Joey Gaziano at their strong side defensive end, which is just kind of a soul-crushing level dude that no one's heard of. They have Patty Fisher, a middle linebacker, who's 250, and he lives to take off fullbacks. This seems like a game where Stanford constantly gets down the field and David Shaw inexplicably punts or misses a field goal, and Northwestern puts enough drives together under Hunter Johnson, the Clemson transfer, to put something together. Like I said, there's no reason Northwestern should win this game. Somehow they're going to win it, and it's going to make no sense.
So the spread that I just saw is 6.5 favoring Stanford. So you're saying Northwestern is going to win straight up?
Give me those points. Yeah, give me the points, and I'll take the straight up win on it.
Wow. All right.
Listen,
like I said, you know a lot more about the Big Ten, so I trust your knowledge on that Northwestern squad there, and you're right about that Stanford team too.
Yeah, David Shaw just seems like the worst matchup for the way Pat Fitzgerald likes to play, which is let's make this as fluky and coin flippy as possible. Pat Fitzgerald is the only non-option coach who consistently is over 2 games of his projected S&P plus output. That's insane. And he does it every year. So at some point, right, numbers don't make sense because it happens every year.
Yeah.
Right? That's just how it rolls.
Yeah. We got Boise State, Florida State. Really interesting game. We got Willie Taggart coming back his second year. What do you think about this matchup?
This is going to be the exciting, awesome, totally meaningless game of the week, in my opinion. So Florida State's defense was awesome last year, despite it not feeling like that, and that's because their average starting field position was like Florida State's 37. It was dead last in the nation. It was that objectively terrible. It's not going to be that bad this year. Their offense is going to be not as bad. And Florida State, one thing they did do last year is get a lot of really big plays and a lot of explosive plays. I think it's going to be rocking. That house is going to be crazy. They're going to be excited, and they're going to play above their head a little bit. And I think they're going to beat a very good Boise State team that always brings it and will put a lot of really short guys in space and make a lot of good plays. But give me Florida State in a high-scoring affair that involves probably a special teams touchdown, a defensive touchdown, and the type of thing the pundits can go, Florida State's back at the end of it before they finish with like a 7-5 season.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I just think, man, I really like Boise. They're just so consistent. They're so consistent. But it's going to be. I think you're right. I think it's going to be a close game. I would not be surprised to see Boise pull one out, though. I just don't have much confidence in Florida State's on offense, and I think they still have a couple years left of kind of rebooting that program. Although I think Taggart will eventually get it done. But yeah, that's a great week one matchup right there.
It's fun. Like that's probably the game besides my own team playing that I'm most excited of watching.
For sure. We have another potential shootout. Oklahoma and Houston. This one has some points on the scoreboard written all over the place. What do you think?
It's weird. I'm not sure there's going to be as many points as people are expecting on this game. I think OU's defense is actually going to become too mediocre this year. They finally got rid of the worst Stoops brother. They've got rid of that cancer that's been plaguing them forever. I mean, it's unreal how terrible he was. They got some players back there. Houston, they're in a transition here with Daniel Holgorsen. I think it will be kind of vaguely competitive early on with Oklahoma pulling away. The thing I'm most fascinated to see is how does Jalen Hurts do? I think people just expect him to be the next great Oklahoma transfer quarterback, but you have to remember Baker Mayfield had a year to sit out. Learn the offense, really came on. Kyle Murray had a year to sit out, learn the offense, really come on. Listen, I think Lincoln Riley is the single greatest offensive mind in football right now. I truly 100% believe that. I think that they're going to take a pretty sizable step back on offense. Now, mind you, a sizable step back on offense for Oklahoma is still like a top 10 offense. Right. So let's not go crazy, but not quite the level you saw. Give me Oklahoma in a game that's vaguely competitive early on that they run away.
I'm also curious to see the play calling, how, mark of any good coach is they adapt their scheme based on the talent that they have. And there's no doubt that Jalen Hurts compared to a Kyler Murray or a Baker Mayfield is a different type of player. I'm not saying he's better or worse, but how does Lincoln Riley adapt his scheme to fit a Jalen Hurts-led offense? Now, against Houston, they might as well just, slice through butter. I mean, I don't think they're going to put up much without his
Oliver.
name is escaping me now. Yeah, Oliver on that defensive line. But yeah, I think Holgorsen, though, long term, that was a huge get for a Houston program, non-Power 5 team. Probably, I know their fan base is really pumped up, ready to go. So it's a tough week one matchup, but I do like both these programs in their direction. And like I said, the big thing for me is Lincoln Riley. The mark of him as a coach is how well he adapts his scheme to.
That's a great point, actually, and one I think that deserves just a second to touch on. As in, when you had Baker Mayfield and Kyle Murray, yes, they were athletic, they could scramble, they could make plays, right, and their legs were always a threat on their offense. But the mark of them was their completion percentages. Both were in the 70+%. Right, they were incredibly accurate quarterbacks who could also do the other things from it.
Right.
Jalen Hurts has not shown a history of being a very accurate quarterback. Not that he can't do it, but I feel like a 73, 74% completion percentage is pretty significantly out of even the best outcomes you'll get of Jalen Hurts. And that's a great point, because I'll be fascinated to watch that, to see if they change it up to a bit more of a run spread, which over a pass spread, which they have been the last couple of years.
And I don't think he should have as many pass attempts as the two guys did. I don't think that's going to set him up for success. I think it should be a more balanced attack, play to his strengths. So that, I think if he does that, and we can go off on another tangent on this, I think Lincoln Riley is going to be getting a lot of phone calls, maybe from your area code for the Cowboys, from Jerry Jones, trying to convince him to come up and coach the Cowboys. I really do think that.
He's Sean McVay. Like, when you watch him, I'm like, oh, this guy is Sean McVay, Andy Reid. He's just a step ahead of everybody else. And I truly believe that with him. And I think the NFL is too dumb to hire him, is what my opinion is on that.
Well, I think they're going to throw buku bucks at him if he can make a third straight Heisman Trophy. I don't even think he has to win. I think he has to be in the conversation. And then the Big 12, we've already, done our Big 12 kind of run through. And I do think that that's going to be an Oklahoma team that's going to be there in the end. So, the trajectory for Lincoln Riley right now, he's a stock you definitely want to be on board with. I think he's heading in the absolute right direction. Any other thoughts on any of the week one matchups, John? We need to wrap up for tonight.
No, I mean, it's a pretty weak week one compared to the last couple ones. But to be honest, I think that's a good thing, because week one, it really is a good time to get a lot of kinks out. And I think we'll see a lot better games in week 2, week 3, when you get into the LSU Texases, the Georgia Notre Dames, right? The key conference, out of conference matchups, when everybody's had a game to get the kinks and the rust out of their system. I think you'll see better football from that. And I think if we have to sacrifice maybe a marquee matchup in week 1 to do that, I think it's worth it. So I'm just excited football's here. That'll easily carry me over maybe a mediocre schedule.
I am with you there, brother. Well, with that, we're going to ask you to please leave us a review below on our YouTube channel. Subscribe to the channel as well. You can also find us on Facebook at our Facebook page, Armchair Sports Talk. You can follow us on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is ACS Sport Talk. For Sean Hicks, I'm Brandon Harris, and we'll see you next time on Armchair Sports Talk College Football.